Great. Got a few more guys coming. Right. Welcome, everybody, to the second London Analytics Platform Show and Tell session. For anybody who's new, who doesn't know me, I'm Kavita Saravanikuma, Director of Business Intelligence for Northwest London and the lead for London Analytics Platform. Just before I set out the agenda for the session now, I wanted to go through the last meeting and reflect on the actions that came out. So I have noted an action to share the data and the technical architecture underpinning the London Analytics platform, which I did. So I sent a set of slides. I don't know whether people have seen it, reflected on it. So I was going to walk through that at the start of this meeting, just to bring everybody onto the same page in terms of what we have as an architecture for London Analytics platform. In terms of the agenda for the day, then after I've walked through those slides, check whether anybody has got any questions. I will move on to the show and tell part of it. So as the session is set out, I wanted to actually show the environment. It doesn't become like a theoretical talk, story. You can see the environment that we have built. And I want to be able to show you how the environment looks like and how we interact with the environment from different personas. So we will start off by showing the data engineering persona. So how my team interacts with the environment, what tools they have available, how they bring the data into the environment, how they link the data, how they curate the data, etc. Then I will move on to a couple of my analysts who will show how they interact with it from a BI analyst persona, how they go in and do their analytics in there, depending on what the ICB, ICS is looking for. And finally, I'm going to get a researcher to come in and show how they interact with the environment and what they are able to see. So that's really the purpose of the session. I had a really good call with Rodney, who said it would be good to lay out what exactly we're trying to achieve. So that's really what we are trying to achieve today. And I'm going to pause after each of the show and tell, so you could ask questions, and we will answer those. Where we can't answer, we will take the questions, and then we move on to the next persona. That's the plan for today. So if I start off with the slide deck I shared via email to all of you a couple of weeks now, so you should have that in your mailbox, but I'll go through quickly. It's not a big slide deck. In terms of the London Analytics platform, just to bring everybody to the same page, as I said, London Analytics platform is one of 5 components that underpins the One London Health Data Strategy. So under the One London Health Data Strategy, we have the London Care Record, we have the London Data Service, we've got the London Analytics platform, the R&D support service, as well as the data-driven health improvement projects. And all of these 5 things are supported by enabling functions like IG, comms and engagement, program management, and business development functions. So we are number 3 in yellow there. And in terms of what the London Analytics platform is meant to do, it's meant to support these 3 use cases. We will be supporting the proactive care use case, the system planning and BI use case, as well as the R&D use case. And this is in line with all of the documentation, the discussions we've been having through the data delivery board, and the communication that's gone up to the execs, ICS execs as well. Clearly, as you see, these 3 use cases will need data at a different level. So if you look at the infrastructure that underpins the London SDE, all of the data will be acquired and ingested into the London Data Service in the first instance from all of the various care settings as prioritized by us as a group. And once the data comes into the London Data Service, the data will be available for subscription to the analytics platform as an identifiable data. So the bold line here is identifiable. So you can see here, this is PID. And the reason why we are subscribing PID is because we have got this, proactive care use case. And the London Analytics platform team, which is my team, will be de-identifying the data or pseudonymizing the data and making it available in a separate DID store, which will be then used for secondary purposes, that is BI and system planning, as well as research and innovation development purposes. In terms of what we have been commissioned to do by the London team, we have been commissioned to subscribe the data set that London Data Service will be, making available within their platform. So by the end of this year, the London Data Service will be working towards acquiring the primary care data from System 1 and EMIS, which will be all coded data that is existing in System 1 and EMIS. And they will also be organizing that data in a compass structure. So there will be a common data model schema that will be available, which will be ready for us to subscribe. We will also then be able to subscribe acute commissioning dataset, mental health service dataset, and community service dataset. All of these three will be available in London Data Service. And I said all of this should be we should be able to subscribe this in an identifiable format, and we are working through the information governance, for that. The information governance paperwork has all been prepared and going through the London IG group for their review and feedback. The team will then have to de-identify the data and keep it in a separate instance. We have gone for Snowflake as our data warehousing platform, which I'll go to in a minute. I've got the technical architecture. And we've also been asked to develop 1 or 2 London-wide dashboards to prove the proactive care use case. So there's a bit of discussion I'm having with Mark from the One London team and Sanjay Kojka Guardian to go around all of the ICSs to agree what would be a useful dashboard to develop. So we are yet to agree that. That's why I said dashboards yet to be confirmed. So there is the document. The London Analytics Platform Commissioning Statement is attached here, so all of you are more than welcome to look at it, review it, and ask me further questions. I didn't want to go through word by word here, but it's got a lot of detail about what we should be doing to support the research use case and the service wrapper as well. So this is in a high level what the strategic architecture is, which I described. Data comes into LDS and subscribed out as bit into One London Analytics Platform, but LDS will make the same data available to all of the ICS's sandpit as well, depending on what your IG arrangements are. In terms of the logical architecture, I want to spend a minute on this one for you to get a feel for what exactly are the tools and technology available within the platform. So the data source will come from, the data source will be a variety of different, ways like CSV or Excel or something, but all, LDS is our data source. But from LDS, we can either take as like a Azure Blob, or whether, we can take as a database transfer, or, CSV or Excel. We are catered our architecture to take data in multiple format is basically what that's trying to say. And then, it moves into sort of orchestrating and a data warehousing area where we use Azure Data Factory to ingest. So Azure Data Factory is used to acquire the data and ingest the data into our data warehouse. And DBT is used to transform the data and curate the data based on the requirements that we have to fulfill, whether it's for dashboards or whether it's for research. Any data curation task will be done through that. The developers have a range of tools, which Ibi will be talking through in a bit as part of his show and tell, where they will do all of these activity. They use Azure DevOps for their version controlling and release management. And there's also a range of governance tools that we have made available within the platform to fulfill the requirements around auditing and security and governance capabilities that we will have to have within the environment. So the cost management, for example, is a key requirement, because when we move into cloud technology, we don't know how much cost will be incurred through all these machine learning projects. So without having a controlled approach to monitoring the cost, we will be in a bit of a risk. So that's why we have established all of these products to help us govern what is happening within the environment. We then move into the whole report and analyze area, where this is where the sort of analyst, whether the analysts are from BI use case or research use case or public health use case, any use case, would be able to interact with the platform. And what we have realized is that depending on the persona and who you are, you would want to interact with the environment through various different tools. So for example, if you're a researcher, researchers tend to use R and Python mostly, or Azure Machine Learning. If you're a BI analyst, you tend to use the Snowflake, which is data warehouse like SQL or Excel or Tableau Power BI. And so we have made a range of products available within the platform to ensure that the right product is available depending on who the users are, and this is what the internal and the external users will have access to. Do note that Power BI is not there. That's because we have not established Power BI in the environment, but we are planning to. That is part of our remit, and we've got that in our roadmap to bring Power BI into this environment. The reason I've not brought it is because I want to work with ISL stroke LDS to have a bit of a joint approach to using the existing Power BI license they have. And I kickstarted the conversation with Pete, which has gone into a bit of a hold. So I need to pick it up and move that forward. Paula, do you want to come in? Now you had your hand up.
You just answered my question, was about Power BI, so you just answered it.
I just moved my screen. I saw your hand come. Felix, do you want to come in before I move on?
Yes, thanks. So one thing that we know is different ICBs are closer to their providers in terms of, say, business rules and logic. So it's plausible there could be a persona where an ICB member of staff would want to be able to engage in a data engineering capacity. Is that something that's being looked into, or is the idea that users outside of NWL would have to be analyst users rather than engineering users? I'm asking because I think there's great potential in collaborating when it comes to data governance, understanding business semantic meanings, being able to share and make use of some of that work that's going on across the region.
No, a fantastic question, Felix. And you're talking to the converted, so you don't even have to say why. I think the why is really clear to me. We just have to make it happen. So it's really about the how. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show today is how data engineers interact. It's not about it's restricted to Northwest London. If you think we have to open up that role to other ICSs, we can absolutely do that. It's really thinking about how, and again, how can we govern what people do and what people can't do without having too many people interact. And that's something we have to work through, I'll be honest, but it's definitely doable is the short answer.
Well, that's really encouraging to hear that we've both got that share vision and commitment to help make it work.
Yeah. So actually, you reminded me of something as you said that, Felix. One of the things like Power BI I mentioned, one of the things that's not in this diagram here, which we are planning to bring in, is GitHub or GitLab. Because we do need that, to be able to share scripts and codes that we're using between different teams, so that the same code can be reused and run on the table. And again, that is with that vision of multiple people will interact with the environment. So that's also something we have planned, and we will bring in as we work on that. But this architecture shows what we currently have in the platform. So I've just gone into a bit more detail, the architecture diagram, which is just an expansion of the previous one, where I've sort of marked it off into what we have in the ingestion layer, what we have in the auditing logging layer, where we prepare and validate, where we serve the PID, where we serve the DID, and how do researchers access or secondary users access the data, which is through an Azure VDI, and how do data engineers access, which is also through an Azure VDI, but it's a data engineer Azure VDI. So we have two virtual desktop, basically, a data engineer desktop and a researcher desktop, which is how different users interact with the environment, which you will see shortly as people show it. I don't want to dwell on it too much. I know Max is on the call. Max, has helped work with us on establishing a framework data ingestion, a framework-driven ingestion, which has a lot of benefit. I'm not going to call out all of this, but this has really given us a structured approach to getting data ingested into the environment, so we can capture, as we are loading data, the metadata, the validation, and we audit log it, and we also have established rollback procedures if something goes wrong. So there's a very controlled approach to how we bring data into the environment and manage it. So I will stop there, and Ibi, if you are there, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, sure. Hi all. Yeah, so I'll kind of give everyone like a brief demo of data engineering environment. So as Kavitha said, there's an AVD we log into. So just let me share my screen. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. Right, so this is basically, it's just a Azure Virtual Desktop, and we've got various tools, so things like DBT, ADF, DevOps. So what I'll do is I'll show you kind of like the end goal is obviously Snowflake, and we have multiple accounts that we have. So from the dev perspective, we can see kind of the. Oh,
Sorry to interrupt, Ibi. So just before Ibi gets on to what he can actually see, what I wanted to say is Ibi, for the purpose of the demo, has actually logged into the environment already and kept it ready. But what I wanted to say is, in order to log into the environment, you have multi-factor authentication. So he has a primary password, and then he also has to use the Authenticator app to put a secondary password. That is what is established to get into the environment. Sorry, Ibi, to interrupt you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, apologies. Yeah, I should have mentioned that earlier. Yes, I've already logged in, as Kavitha mentioned. Yeah, so I can access Snowflake through the web UI, and as you can see, I've got many accounts accessible to me. So what we do is we do all our development in our dev environment, and we use a deployment method using ADF to go to a UAT environment and then to a prod environment. So what I'll do is I'll kind of show you briefly exactly what these tools are about. So ADF is just the mechanism to orchestrate kind of the data flow. So getting from a flat file into a Parquet file and then into the data warehouse. This is all controlled by a framework designed and controlled very strictly within metadata. So everything is driven by this metadata approach, which is stored in DevOps, which is our source control environment. So any changes that need to be made needs to be made inside DevOps before it can be then deployed. DBT is where we produce the coding, any logic, any transformations that we use use DBT. So as you can see, this is a very simple output of a script that we use for a dashboard visualization, but it's the end product. So there's quite a lot of models that go in before this end product. If we need to make a change, what we do is we pull down the code from main, create a branch from main, and then use that to change the code and then push back into main. Once this happens, then that goes into DevOps, and someone else needs to approve that. So we've got a strict change control in order for this to happen. Once this change happens, this then gets deployed into the UAT environment so that we know that this change has been taking place and correctly taken place. So yeah, I'll show you DevOps in a second and show you the change that I just made. So as you can see, it's actually been just approved just now. But as you can see, there's changes that's happened, and you can see exactly where this change has been taken place, which is a simple change, but it's all auditable and viewed by any of our members of staff. So that's basically kind of the tools that we use in that sense. What we do is also we don't make any changes directly into our production environment. So all our changes is source controlled, and any development is done in dev, and then we make sure that it's being applied correctly, and none of the the data engineers is allowed to make any changes in production. So it's a very strict and locked down process.
And maybe if you go back into the Snowflake for a second and show the different accounts you have access to, I just wanted to dwell on it a bit, where Ibi showed you like these are all the accounts. So you can see here there are 6 accounts there. So there is a LSDE dev. So LSDE basically is London SDE, and we have established the London SDE sort of dev, prod, and also the DIDENT database. but we don't currently have any data flowing from LDS into London Analytics platform. So in order to test and make sure this environment is set up as we should, we have created a WYSIC dev prod and a WYSIC de-ident, which is Northwest London's in our system, because clearly we are hosted by Northwest London. We have access to Northwest London data. So we can bring the Northwest London data into this environment and set it up so that everything works as anticipated, and it's how, Evie is describing in preparation for London-wide data to flow. So that's why you're seeing these 6 environments.
Yeah,
Felix,
thanks.
do you want to come in, Felix?
Yeah, this is all very, very encouraging. When it comes to direct care use cases or proactive care products, how does is there a clinical assurance step, and is that baked into the DevOps, or is that a step that still needs to be checked? Again, very encouraged to see good use of DevOps.
Yeah, so at the moment, the clinical assurance happens outside of DevOps. And Rachel, do please chip in here, because it is sort of managed by the deployment team, and Rachel leads the deployment team. So every time we have a dashboard design and prototype developed, Rachel's team is basically the business analysis and deployment team. They work with the clinicians, agree a prototype, agree the key business questions that needs answering, what metrics we are trying to capture. So all of those metrics calculation will happen in DBT that Evie mentioned. So the dev team will work on all of that and then, pull the data into the dashboard. And Rachel's team will then, work on a test plan and work with the clinicians to test that dashboard through a testing phase. And once it's been approved and signed off by the clinicians, that's when it will be deployed into production. So that's roughly the order of activities. Rachel, is there anything else you want to add to that?
The only additional step I just mentioned is that we ensure that we do a validation back with local systems, if that's where the data is coming from, to ensure that the logic encoding is what we've agreed it to be. So there is plenty of assurance throughout the entire process to make sure that what the end product is what we agreed it should be.
Yeah, but the bottom line is it happens outside DevOps. And Felix will be really keen to hear your view of, do we think if it can it happen within DevOps? It's something we can take away. We haven't really thought about that, to be honest. So that would be an interesting thought. Rodney, do you want to come in?
Yes, I'm certain that you do it, but just going to tease it out anyway. So when you make your changes, you look at all the dependencies and make sure that everything's fine.
Is it more from this proactive dashboard, or is it on data? Like which part?
Well, on the data layer. If you change something, because obviously if you change something and there's an expectation of another method or stored procedure calling something in a particular order or something, you check the dependencies of the code change and make sure that everything works fine before you deploy it.
Yeah, so DBT does do that in the back end. So when you build the DBT model, and then it'll check all the dependencies and make sure that it's running in a sequential order, just to make sure. We have instances where we've had a loop in place where we've had to change things. So DBT does check that while we build the model itself. So we always build the model before we deploy.
There's a whole data lineage, isn't it, Ibi, that we can work through, which identifies those dependencies, Rodney. And that's again the benefit of this architecture, where all of that gets picked up earlier rather than later. Whereas in SQL, we pick up when something actually falls over. This way, we have a data lineage and we can follow it through from source all the way to destination. So if a dependency is missed out, then it's quite clear early on in the process.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I could have probably shown you DBT docs, but that kind of gets into the detail and the whole architecture. So it is quite detailed in terms of the lineage. But it's very transparent, and I think that's the main thing about this environment. As Rachel, sorry, go on.
No, sorry, just carry on. I was just going to say if you could wrap up in 3-4 minutes to get onto the other personas.
Yeah, sure. as part of the data engineer and also the researcher, what we do is also have created some wiki pages as well. So just to show you, so we've got everything again, it's all in DevOps source controlled. And what we do is we have everything documented. So everyone's using kind of the same methodology. And this is kind of an example of a wiki page that we've given to researchers to kind of convert and their on-prem SQL statements to Snowflake, so to show exactly what the differences are, etc. So this is available to researchers as well, but this is all source controlled and version controlled as well. So yeah,
and we've also developed a tool, haven't we, Ibi, that is accessible to the users. Do you want to touch on that as well?
Yeah, so there's a tool inside Snowflake, which is a function developed where you put in a piece of code into SQL. Again, sorry, I don't have a demo of it, but it converts kind of the syntax from SQL to MS SQL to Snowflake, which is available to all researchers, so they can use it on demand. So they don't need to go through the dev team or the data engineering team to use it. It's just on demand when they need it.
Yeah, and that's basically like, to prepare for this transition, as all of you can appreciate, it's a bit of a change, right? Moving from SQL to Snowflake, and we've got to support staff. And what we found definitely with the, analysts and the researcher personas, they've already been working on certain projects and they've got scripts readily available. So in order to push it into the Snowflake environment, it's a bit of a disruption. So in order to avoid the disruption or, get them, or to avoid them depending on the data engineering team, we have developed this tool. So people can use the tool, pop their SQL statements, and it'll convert it into Snowflake, and it's, to make their life a little bit more easier. Maybe anything else you want to call out?
Yeah, I guess the advantage of, again, using Snowflake is we can change the warehouse size again on demand, and so all the tools and processes that we do, we can change what process use a different size of warehouse. So our transformation can use a higher warehouse than our just a simple data load. So it gives us the flexibility of spinning up or spinning down the process, the warehouse, depending on what's required.
Yeah, agreed. And again, it comes back to the cost, element of a cloud environment. So we have the Snowflake warehouse in 3 different ways, isn't it? It'd be like standard, large, and extra large. So what we offer to the researchers is a standard offering. But say if you're running a resource intensive machine learning model, then we can easily scale it up to the next layer. And then we have a costing report that monitors the cost associated with that particular project. And the idea is we will start to recharge people. So again, there's a little bit of work we need to do to talk about those recharging elements. Because as a host, we don't want to be left liable for the costs incurred, irrespective of the fact that we have all these modern tech. We've got to be mindful of cost throughout. Yeah, there you go. So that is we are able to see the activity and the cost incurred fairly easily, which we have access to as a admin team.
And you can change the warehouse quite easily from here, from the UI. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Ibi. So that was a whistle-stop tour of what a data engineer can do. So Hannah, Leah, are you ready to move on to the BI persona?
Yeah, sure. I'll just pop something up on the screen. So we got pulled in to do an analytical piece using the tool. So we got reached out to by the clinical lead for CKD, as well as the project support lead in need of some BI support. So we had a weekly, which then turned to a fortnightly working group with them, where we agreed what were the goals and the aims for this key project. They kind of had 3 goals to go forward with, and one was to improve the coding of CKD across the system, support proactive care, so GPs could find patients moving between different stages of CKD and offer them the best support, but also improve the patient care by reducing the progression, by giving them the testing and getting the results and giving the support of medication needed for each of the patients. it was agreed that these dashboards will be used by a multitude of people. So it was GP practice as well as health boroughs and the programme support team. So we had to get something that was quite flexible that could answer the multitude of questions that were coming in. So we agreed that the London Analytics platform was the right way to go for us, because we needed the multitude of data sets to be able to track through different tables to identify the cohort group, because the sense of the cohort group kept changing and amending. So that's where we initially started. And Leah is going to kindly show you on the screen how we pulled this all together in the Snowflake side of things and the Excel dashboard.
Thank you, Hannah. And just to let everybody know, Hannah is one of my brilliant analytics leads. So one of my analytics leads in Northwest London, and Leah is our senior analyst who works under Hannah in her team. Yeah, over to you, Leah.
Thank you very much. So I will share my screen and talk you through how we use the environment. So as an analyst, we have access to the, let me close that. We have access to the research desktop. So as you can see on my screen, we have Snowflake, Excel, Tableau, and these are the main applications that I use currently. So for this report, I started in Snowflake. So we just can open it up via the web and sign in. And that will take me to a list of my worksheets. And then I just simply create a new SQL worksheet here.
Again, as Leah's doing is, you would have noticed that, when Leah had to get into the Snowflake, she had a single sign-on. So it's not about remembering a username or password. We have single sign-on established back with the Azure AD. We have set it up to, work on Azure AD in anticipation of all of the ICSs coming on board and, all of the users from across London accessing it. So not to our Northwest London Active Directory. Sorry, Leah, carry on.
No, that's fine. Thank you. So to the left, we have various databases. So we have the DID prod, which I only have read access to. This contains the GP events table, the GP prescriptions table, and the patient demographics table, which I've used in my analysis. We also have access to the DID sandbox area, which is we have read and write access to this area, so we can create views and tables to make it easier to perform our analysis. So I'll take you across to my script. It's quite a lengthy one. So initially, we were in talks about the certain metrics and the conditions that need to be met, and we have come up with a list of SNOMED codes needed for these metrics. So I've just created a simple temp table with a list of all these SNOMED codes to make it easier for me to query it further down, and I've grouped them as well, as you can see here. So I will quickly go through. So further down in my script, I've also created a loop. This allows me to look at the metrics at different points in time. And then right at the end, I've just compiled a list of all my metrics and the conditions that need to be met. So that's right at the bottom here. Apologies, it's very large. So that's here. So this is at patient level at the moment. Just to let you know that it is non-PID data, so it's all pseudonymized. And I've extracted this at health borough, PCN, and GP practice level. So I just simply run my script. It takes about 5 minutes to run because it's quite a long one. I then have exported the data. So I've downloaded the data and I've exported it into Excel. So I've just pasted it in here. So also I've suppressed the data because we're not allowed counts of less than 5. So once I've pasted the data in here, I've used pivot tables and sum ifs and various other formulas to create this final output here. So this just simply shows the metrics at health borough, PCN, and GP practice level. And we've got a list of the targets which were provided by the programme themselves, and various filters, so they're able to alter the view below and just specify which kind of metrics they want to consider here. And also we've got some trends to the right. So that is the Excel version of the dashboard. This has been through a couple of iterations. So we've been back and forth with the programme and to understand how they want it displayed, and made changes. So hopefully we'll be able to finalise this at the end of the week, and then in doing so we will copy this out of the environment, and we will send everyone a link of where this will be saved on the SharePoint. Then once this is all finalised, we will then hopefully translate this to Tableau. So for a couple of my projects, we've done that so far. It's easier to manipulate it initially in Excel. And then, yeah, once we have the sign off, we're able to paste it in. So I'll just quickly show you initially to create it in Tableau. We just open the Tableau here, and then we're able to connect to Snowflake. So that would take a minute or so once we press this and we're able to sign in here. And then it will take us to this display here. Once we've specified the warehouse, the database, and the schema, we're able to find our table. So I've found my final output table, which is here, and I'm able to simply drag and drop it into this area and then create the visualizations on the sheets and compile it into a final dashboard. So that's what we'll do for this project, and I've done for a couple of others. So as specified before, Excel and Tableau are the main applications that we use, but we are going to be using R in the future for data forecasting. And that is everything. Thank you.
Thanks, Leah. That was super helpful and really clear. I'll take questions now, Leah, if you stop sharing for a minute. Amy?
Thanks. And as being a highly not technical person, I got a couple of percentages of what just happened. But my question is really about functionality in the future, capability. So, in the case finding elements that you showed us around CKD, is it going to be possible to look at that through different demographic lenses? Because one of the things that we're keen to understand are things like, are those people who should be coded and aren't overrepresented in some communities rather than others, that would help with kind of targeting some of the interventions. Is that kind of functionality going to be possible?
Do you want to go, Hannah?
Sure. Yes, it definitely is. It is part of the list as kind of stage 2, 3 to this process. There's a need to look at the demographics and the ethnicity to see where the patients that aren't scoring as high in their achievements resonate from in the different areas. We know we've got a difference in the boroughs because of different services, but actually what are the demographics differences? That is a next step and an extra page, which we have done a lot of other dashboards. We've only been doing this project for 2 months. We're just trying to get the codes right first, but that is a next stage for us on this. Yes.
Yeah. But Amy, absolutely. Because we've got the identifiable data, we know who the actual patient is. We know who they are, their age, their gender, their ethnicity, where they live, where they are registered to, and their deprivation, etc. So we can drill down to that level. That's the whole point, right, of setting this as a data ecosystem where, you don't want to do a project for single use cases like that. Oh, let's do a case finding for CKD, or let's identify inequality with CKD,
exactly.
Or let's do performance metrics for CKD. We want ideally single set of metrics and a dashboard developed which can drill down so that it meets the needs of the various stakeholders of the ICS. That's really how we have set this up. Felix.
Yeah, really like the dashboards. Looks like you work really closely with the program to get something that's very relevant and built on modern architecture. So I'd love to see that. On the step 1 of your scripts, you define a terminology effectively, right? A group of SNOMED codes. But at the moment, that's living inside your SQL script. This might be a Kavitha question, but when we've got the established terminology server, how is it envisioned that you define this CKD patient group? And just to explain the business impact of that is there could be a way where in Northwest London, it's this group of SNOMED codes that's used. But in this Nature paper published last month for all of London, they use a slightly different set of codes. So how would it look like to reference that terminology part? And then as a follow-on question, what does the architecture look like to enable you to do more of the functions, more of the analysis in code, so it can be shared rather than captured in Excel, which I acknowledge is great for prototyping?
Yeah. So great questions, Felix. And I don't know, Michelle, Andy, whether any of you want to come in from an LDS perspective about the terminology server. So the LDS team are building a terminology server, and they will be coming up with those common code sets. So we want to work with them, Felix. Where how I envisage is that we have a set of codes for CKD, and we also are able to see in a single place. These are the codes for Northwest London. These are the codes for NCL. These are the codes for Southeast, Southwest, etc. So if you do have to build, the metrics and the data or underpinning the dashboard, then we can work with that. So. Andy, Michelle, any of you want to come in and say where you are with the terminology server and how we can interact with it as a London Analytics platform? Well, if not, that's fine.
Felix, I'm happy to say a couple of words if I'm not jumping on anyone else's question. But I suppose, just to say that the terminology server, exactly as Kavita's described, it's a piece of technology that would be embedded in the London data service with North East London hosting, but we envisage would be available to all of the relevant components of the stack. So we can think of it as ubiquitous, and it could be accessed through the London Analytics platform if that's where you're working. And that's one point for us all to kind of think through in the design. And then in terms of its function, then we'd imagine that in the design, which is being worked up currently, there's the idea that there'd be a core definition for a particular definition like this, and that if there is a local variation that arises, say in this example, the different definition that came up in Nature, then that definition could also be keyed as a variation into the same terminology service, and then a governance group with representatives, clinical representatives from across London, would be able to look at those two kind of competing definitions and say which one do we want to hold as the kind of core and which one is a local variation, and just have an organic yet coordinated conversation through that centralized mechanism with outputs that are available to all.
Thank you, Andy. That's really helpful. So Felix, that's it. That's exactly what we need to have in place, both from a technical governance and a clinical governance. As soon as LDS have it ready, we will start plugging into it. And, I do need to work closely with Andy and the team to understand when and how we will be able to interact with it. But till then, as I said, since we are setting up this platform and testing it with Northwest London, we have just the option, because, I don't want to reinvent the wheel and set up something else. So what I've said to the team is they will have to either, take the SNOMED codes and put into a reference table or stick it in the script like Leah has done. And for transparency, we have shown you that, we have other areas where we have put into a table that, I'm sure Rachel and Ibi can show you next time. Carla.
Hello. So I had a couple of questions on the presentations we just saw in terms of kind of as an analyst. So the first one is, would this work in exactly the same way for all of the analysts, or is this just for Northwest London analysts?
It's all of the analysts, Carla, as I said, because we've got just Northwest London data, the Northwest London analysts are already interacting with it. So we are showing you how they are interacting to give you a flavor.
So then I wasn't entirely clear, and it might be we don't have time today, but it'd be good to explore that in another call. How does kind of the operational side of things work? So what we were shown is how you build a report. That's fine. We'll have different ways of building it. But then where does it all centrally get stored? So it would just be good to see that, because I've got this idea in my head. I've got no idea if I'm imagining it correctly or not. So if we're the end users, where do we go and what do we see? And sort of how do we go from having an idea, it being discussed with clinicians, a report being developed? Is there some sort of committee that would then translate it into Tableau or to Power BI and actually publish it? Like, do analysts publish it directly? Like, kind of just thinking through how that process would work. And it might be we haven't thought that far ahead, but it would just be good to kind of understand kind of how all of that would work.
Yeah.
And so just linked to that, a very specific question. So the analysts would be working with pseudo data when they're building the reports, if I understood correctly. And then as soon as the report is published, is that when it becomes available in clear for authorized clinicians when it comes to that, but it all kind of happens seamlessly behind the scenes. So if I was a clinician looking at the report, I'd see the clear version of that.
Yep.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll give you the short answer. We can again, focus on this in a bit more detail in the next show and tell. But in terms of how the reports get published currently, as Leah mentioned, we create reports in either Tableau or Excel currently. So if it's created in Excel, it gets published on a Teams channel, and the analysts have the authorization to publish onto our Teams channel and make it available to users. So users will be sent a comms, they can come and ask for access to be given into the relevant Teams channel. If it has to be published on a Tableau server, then it goes back to EB's team. EB's team is basically the data engineering team, and they have, the sort of deployment rights into production. The analyst can create it in the dev area and then say we've created, but the deployment into production will be done by EB's team. And that's where, the sort of conversion into PID and, clinicians seeing PID also happens, Carla, because the analysts don't have access to the PID, whereas the data engineering team has access. So even in my team, there is a separation. So only EB's team has access to PID. Hannah's team does not have access to PID. So if they create something in an aggregate format, and they want it to be deployed into production, then EB will check, is this definitely got to be in aggregate level? Then it goes to a specific analytics site. But it's got to be available in PID for clinicians, then it goes into a different site. So we have organized our Tableau server into various sites, and that's how it goes. But, it's a short answer. I know you will probably have a lot more follow-up question. I've marked it down to go through in a bit more detail in the next show and tell. Jamie.
Thanks, guys. This is getting to the kind of topics we've been after. That last comment from Carla, it sounds like we need a separate IG group because it sounds great. I just can't see it. I can't figure out how it works in practice yet, but we can talk through that. It's the IG part I'm worried about because, like Carla was saying, I need to land this with the GPs. They need to see the clear NHS numbers, and our current solution just doesn't do it very well at all.
Yeah.
So is there an IG work stream as part of this?
Mark, do you want to come in and answer that from a program perspective?
Yeah, so helpful. I think yes, there is an IG work stream, and I think it's quite progressed now. So we've had input from all 5 ICSs into the work. It's Claire Edgeworth who's been supporting from the Southwest London side in particular, Jamie. It's probably worth a specific conversation with her. But collectively, we've now created a single framework, a sort of One London data sharing framework, under which there is a set of data sharing agreements that get to the heart of what you just said. So it sets out the legal basis for sharing the data and processing it when the purpose is for direct care and for which you need patient identifiable data. And it also sets out the arrangements for those teams who don't need patient identifiable data because they're using it for secondary purposes. So there's a very dedicated piece of work on that. And there's been some specific expert legal input from King's Counsel to review the proposal. So this week, the London IG Steering Group is going to be looking at the sort of outline documents and then taking it to local engagement. Happy to pick up on more in detail on that if you're interested, but that is in train and your GPs will be being engaged with on that. We're talking to the LMCs as well about specifically the legal bases.
Okay, thank you. That's fantastic. It's more, I didn't want to be surprised that BI was supposed to have thought about the IG, but you've got this all in train.
Thanks, Jamie. Carla?
So I think that's really excellent news. I was just going to ask if and how we're cited on what those things are getting agreed, because there'll be some kind of overarching principles as, we can share data between us, etc. And then the devil will be in the details. So, how do you small numbers suppress? What records are you allowed to share? Which clinicians can see which records, etc. So I think it would just be good for us to understand what has been agreed so far and what detail still needs to be discussed. And I think for some of those questions, you probably need input from quite a few people from different ICBs and kind of how we tend to work and what we think some of the local IG limitations have been, and kind of getting confirmation that those have now been that we're all satisfied that it works differently or it works the same, but basically what those rules are, I think. So I'm just saying, I think that might be a topic for another session, but I'm not sure where that would be, because I'm not part of the IG group, and just leaving it to local engagement is probably not going to achieve the same message being translated correctly. And kind of the detail really matters when it comes to these things. Thank you.
Carla. So, like, I'll let Mark come in and answer as well, but just to, like, give my perspective on this. So from a Northwest London perspective, we have our IG lead sitting through these conversations that Mark is describing. But within Northwest London, the IG lead will come and discuss with me, because I'm the BI lead for Northwest London as well, to, like, agree, understand how I'm currently processing the data, what is it that I need, have queries, etc. So we sort of got that, alignment, because, as you say, we can't be in every meeting. So I don't go to these IG forum. I just don't have enough capacity to do that. But what I'm keen to understand and, reflect on is how we process the data currently, to make sure none of that is, like, falling off the cliff edge, because there'll be a lot of change to how I, process data currently. So that's how I work. But Mark, to come in.
Yeah, and I'll drop a note in here so I don't take more time. But, in South East London, Ian, who's on the call, is the nominated lead with Claire Delaney-Pope. I would strongly encourage you to be having these conversations at a local level and then feedback through that IG group, because we can't have meetings where everybody's at everything for the reasons Kavita's just said. I'll drop a list over email of all the people involved in the IG work streams. This group in particular, I would strongly encourage you, I know many of you are, to be actively talking to your colleagues there, and to put your insight into those pieces, not on issues of law, because we've had separate legal expert advice on it, but on issues of functional requirement from your perspective.
Thank you, Mark. So I don't know, like, Graham, I just saw your note that you'll have to drop off. I don't know whether, we sort of have that IG discussion in one of the BI partnership management group, because I think it's really important for the BI leads to understand what's going on, etc. But going to answer your question, Graham, before you drop off, so I did confirm the data sets. It will be the primary care, acute CDS, mental health service data set, and commissioning service data set that will come from LDS into the London Analytics platform. In terms of what the team is showing, because I'm working only on Northwest London data, and I've got the approval via Northwest London to put all of Northwest London's data into London Analytics platform, my analytics team, have all the data that I currently have in Visic. So you won't have all of the data I currently have in Northwest London for whole of London, if that makes sense. So for London, it'll only be 4 data set. We do have, we are currently having some conversation with NCL though, to discuss, bringing additional data feed from NCL. And I know I owe Andy a response to having some joint conversation about the interaction with London Analytics platform. So again, it depends ICS by ICS what they want to do. So there is an ability, is really what I'm trying to show within the architecture, to bring more data if you wanted to, and do what we are doing with the environment. Rodney?
Yeah, quick question. So if as an ICB, we've developed something and we know it's fit for purpose and correct, could we deploy it, or there's a dependency on your data engineering team?
Well, this is it. So, when you say my data engineering team, there is a London Analytics platform team. Yeah, they are here to serve the whole of London. So that's what they should be doing. They should be deploying. And, yes, there is a dependency, but that dependency is needed for governance perspective. We can't have everybody roll things into production. That's just poor practice. So we do have to, like, go via the team. But that team is in no shape or form going to be just doing Northwest London work. That is a London Analytics platform team.
Sure. It's just, I thought I made a mistake in articulating, but I just wanted to know if, and maybe you can share how you envisage that process to work,
Yeah.
Because that could potentially be a bottleneck, and I think that would alleviate people's concerns. Thanks.
Yeah. And it won't be. And, that's why we've gone for this architecture. So it's really, really, like, fast and quick, which, Ibi could talk about if he had more time. This is absolutely, we've gone to this architecture so we could do this faster. That's why we have moved in. Jimmy, before you come in, I'm just going to say, Ben, clearly, like, we've got a few more questions on this and we're not going to go through the research use case. It won't be fair, to give you like 5 minutes to do all the fantastic work you do. So we'll probably carry that over to the next session, Ben. Ben Pierce, thank you. And just, a spoiler alert, when Ben was going to come in and do the researcher persona, I was hoping you could see that as a researcher, he interacts with R, Python, Azure Machine Learning. So you could see all of that come through, which, you didn't see in the BI or the data engineering. But I will hold that for the next session because I'm keen you ask more questions. And again, the reason why we are doing it this way is so you could ask more questions. So if he didn't show you what we are doing, it'll all be theory and you don't know what to ask. Jamie.
Sorry, Ben. We keep asking questions, but look forward to the next session. You mentioned different, how do I put this right? Different people engaging in different layers of security. Is that something we need to think about on our side? So it's people that see clear data. Do we need to think about seconding people, or rethinking our structures to reflect what you've got?
You have to, is my advice. I'm not an IG professional. That is a conversation you have to have with your IG team, Jamie. But again, in Northwest London, I hold the whole BI team, but not everybody can see PID. Because we have got the approval to see PID and process PID for direct care purposes, there's only a small team that's got the access, and that is all listed, and that is the access is provided for maintenance purpose. So we've got that maintenance clause. So my analyst team, can't see PID, and we have to keep that strict discipline, and we have audits that we have to run, and we submit it as part of a DSPT, etc. So I guess that will be the same for your area if you had to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Carla?
I feel really bad taking up time with this issue, but I have no other way of raising it. We don't have access to the chat. So I just wanted to know, is that just happening, myself and Nick? Because I noticed you mentioned something about Graham putting something in the comments. We can't see anything. I saw the comment I put in the very beginning saying hi to Hannah, and that's it. Then I got kicked out of the chat. Oh. Is it because we're not on NHSnet? Because we might be outliers there. We're the ones that don't have that account. Can anybody else see it? And how do I fix it? Because if it's just a Southeast London thing, I'll speak to my ICT, but it was working in the beginning of the call and now it isn't. So I'm just worried, what am I missing if people have put useful comments?
I don't have an NHS account and I can see the chat.
Okay, so it's not that at all.
Yeah.
Does anyone know why I can't see?
Can you see Nick? Is that a
no?
problem?
Nick can't see.
Oh, Nick can't see
either. No.
There's no special permission set up. Carla, I promise you, I didn't kick you out. So yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what.
We'll see if it's resolved by the next one, and if not, then I'll raise it again.
I'll copy the chat out and I'll send it to you though. Yeah, so you can see who's posted what. Yeah. Right, guys. Thank you all for your questions and listening intently and your participation. Really grateful. If you've got anything you want to talk about the next meeting, do drop me a line. But I've got a couple of things I've taken away. So next meeting we are going to focus on the research use case. So Ben gets the first half hour and show you that research persona, because I think we're all moving into that space, aren't we? That machine learning space. So I think we will all want to see how to interact with the environment from our Python machine learning. But we still got half hour more. So anything people want, I would rather tell you what you want to hear rather than come and talk at you and go. Rodney, final word, and then we're out of time.
Yeah, I think we had some questions from last time that we probably didn't answer. You took some questions away. Yeah,
it was about the data and technical architecture, which is all put in the slide deck I shared. Do you still feel there is anything unanswered? Rodney, please drop me a line. I will pick it up and answer.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you all for your time. Take care.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.